This is United Network News with Sunny Galt, Calen Gipp, Kimberly Gogan, and our field messengers from around the world. Here's today's real news.
There are many reports all over social media about cloud seeding possibly being used by the U.S. government to seed Hurricane Helene, which has brought a lot of attention to the alleged conspiracy theory of chemtrails. So many reports have been circulating that it has led the U.S. government to respond, calling it conspiracy. CNN claims the reports are only coming from right-wing conspiracy theorists whom are attempting to sway the upcoming elections. So what is really going on here? Let's take a look at the history before we decide.
Weather modification use in the military. I kept scrolling down here as we're sitting there talking, right? It says Operation Popeye was a highly classified operation run by the U.S. military in 1967 and 1972. The purpose was to prolong the monsoon in Southeast Asia. The overwhelming precipitation successfully disrupted the tactical logistics of the Vietnamese army. Operation Popeye is believed as the first successful practice of weather modification technology in warfare. After it was unveiled, weather modification in warfare was banned by the Environmental Modification Convention. Now listen, we all know that if it's banned, then there's absolutely no way anybody would ever use it again.
Right. That's right.
Social media and Wikipedia state Operation Popeye, conducted by the U.S. military, was one of the first uses of cloud seeding weather modification in warfare. The report also states it was used to extend the monsoon season in Vietnam so that necessary bridges, roads, and trails would wash out, which would cut off supply lines of the Viet Cong. Our sources say it was much worse than that. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military allegedly was spraying chemical trails. At least the reports got that much right. However, it wasn't to flood out key areas of the state. You see, those chemicals contain a highly toxic substance called dioxin. The military claims the use of dioxin was necessary to obtain a line of sight within the deep, lush jungles of Vietnam. But is that true? Dioxin is a chemical you may be familiar with as it was used in various weed killers available at your local hardware store until it was banned recently. This chemical, also called Agent Orange, has had long-term and widespread effects on thousands of Americans who served in the war, as well as Vietnamese citizens long after the war ended. In fact, children are still being born decades later with deformities.
This is Tincture Maternity Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City. Now, Dr. Phu is based there, and she's a tireless campaigner when it comes to making people all over the world aware of the connection between Agent Orange and children born with deformities. I'm here to visit something called a Peace Village, one of 13 she has set up. She believes many of the children in them have been affected by Agent Orange, a defoliant dropped by US forces. Everybody wants to speak to you.
Yeah.
This is the Peace Village.
Yeah.
Would you mind showing me some of the children? Tell me about this. Dr. Geoengineering Pharmaceutical is internationally respected for her work. Though she's 77, she feels she can't fully retire. She takes me first to meet a little girl called Cham.
You see, Cleft Valley here. Sao con có bú được không?
So this is a child whose parents were affected by Agent Orange.
He's blind.
And these are all signs of children who have been affected by Agent Orange.
Yeah, you see, 5 deformities recognized by the scientific community. First is neurotype defects, deformities of sensory organs, the Siamese twins, cleft palate and cleft lip, and deformities of limbs. Those deformities are common in Vietnam.
Dr. Phu told me that a research study she conducted showed that birth defects in Agent Orange sprayed areas were 3 or more times higher than other places.
Here we take care mainly the children affected by the Agent Orange. About 60% of them have parents directly exposed to the Agent Orange during war or after the war.
But the war was years ago. Why is it still affecting children now? This is third and fourth generation.
One thing is that the dioxin can be transmitted from mother to the babies.
The Agent Orange used during the war contained a dangerous chemical called dioxin. Dr. Feuer and many scientists believe it can lead to genetic mutations. Studies where mice were given dioxin showed this. It's hard to prove in humans, but Dr. Feuer herself is convinced that generations of Vietnamese children are being affected.
Since the early 1970s, chemical trails have continued all over the world being sprayed on humanity by all militaries, not just the U.S. Are some of these chemicals used to alter the weather, amplify storms, or create unnatural weather patterns? In short, yes. However, many ex-military soldiers are saying they contain a whole lot more than that. Kristen Megan, former U.S. Air Force sergeant turned whistleblower, confirms the military may be spraying harmful chemicals on the population.
Well, it was around 2007 that I first heard about geoengineering, and I started to piece the puzzles together. Well, part of my job in bioenvironmental engineering was to approve hazardous materials that came on the base. Now, there are certain things we all know in the military that are classified, right? Yep. So even though I had a security clearance, it says a need-to-know basis. So when I started approving what is called an Air Force Form 3952, the approval of hazardous materials, and I started seeing barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium come on the base from a contractor whose name was not listed, which was not normal, I started to realize that those crazy tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorists might not be so crazy. So in 2008, amongst myself, I lived about less than a mile behind the flight line at Tincture Air Force Base, Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City. And due to my background as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist, I conducted soil grid sampling and rain sampling. Those of you who may not be too privy to chemistry, you know that there's natural elements occurring in Earth. Aluminum is one of them. However, barium, radioactive, and strontium are not. So I conducted those samples and saw limits in my community that would make your head spin. And I started to realize that those peers within my professional community that were trying to wake those of us in the military up were right.
Since Hurricane Helene, the number of social media posts about chemtrails has tripled, and so has the number of posts debunking these claims, stating it's just condensation trails, or contrails for short. However, this Navy pilot states these too are harmful to the environment.
Hey Climate Peeps, today I wanted to talk to you about the truth about chemtrails. You may not know this, but I'm actually a former Navy pilot and at one point had a top secret clearance. So I have a little authority on the subject, and I can say with certainty that the burning of aviation fuel puts chemicals into the air and it leaves behind pollution that is affecting the climate. But that's not some nefarious government plot. That's just the completely expected consequence of using the atmosphere as a dumping ground for the burning of billions of tons of fossil fuels, especially when that happens at high altitude. I think we forget how many chemicals we accept in our natural environment as being normal, when in fact it has harm to humans, to animals, and to ecosystems, and this involves things like pesticides, microplastics, and aerosols. A lot of things that help us to make our lives better, but that really often make them worse. And if that involves mind control, it's really in changing the thinking that we can't do something about it. So recognize that burning aviation fuel has double the climate impact, and really that should be alone enough to stand against.
These condensation trails only last a short while in the sky after the plane passes and do not last all day as opposed to chemtrails. Thank you for your government-sponsored information. Now back to our story. Here are some other facts about government spraying. During the Cold War, the British government conducted more than 750, quote, mock chemical warfare attacks on the general public, according to a CNN article. During these, quote, mock attacks, hundreds of thousands of UK, USA, and Canadian citizens were sprayed with zinc cadmium sulfide, a chemical chose due to its small size and its ability to mimic other biological weapons. The U.S. Army also used this same chemical, allegedly as a tracer, to simulate the spread of biological weapons and chemicals used in warfare. During the late 1950s, it was not uncommon to see these chemicals throughout the skies of the USA daily. Yes, the U.S. Army admitted to spraying U.S. citizens with chemicals they claim are harmless. Various medical reports state cadmium is a carcinogenic, and repeated exposure is known to cause bone and kidney cancer. Zinc cadmium sulfide is also known to cause shortness of breath, laryngitis, sore throat, coughing, lung disease, and more. Further, the chemical is also known to accumulate in plants, seafood, humans, and animals, which means repeated exposure can potentially cause even more problems. So is this just about cloud seeding? It appears not. Several countries have been using alternative methods to create rainfall in arid areas without chemicals. Since 2021, the United Arab Emirates has been using drones equipped with a payload of electric charge emission. These drones then deliver an electric charge to air molecules, which then creates rainfall. The University of Geneva, in cooperation with the German government, has been experimenting with infrared lasers, which have created rain since around 2010. So is it really necessary to spray chemicals of any sort if this was just about rain? But of course, if we listen to mainstream media, the government, or highly paid social media influencers, it's all hogwash. No government would ever interfere with the weather, nor would they ever spray harmful chemicals on their citizens. The information is out there. Read more than just the glittering headlines or watch more than just 1 minute of social media video, and you may just realize you are not so crazy after all. The information in this report confirms several different ways governments have used cloud seeding to manipulate the weather and have also been spraying chemicals on its own citizens since the early 1950s. Most of the information in this report is available online through various sources. It's not even a secret. You just have to know where to look and do your research.
Efforts to assist those affected by the hurricane in North Carolina are underway. UNN Field Messenger Amy reports on aid initiatives and the community's resilience in the region.
Field Messenger Amy with a report from Swannanoa, North Carolina for UNN. North Carolina state troopers asked my sources group to come down and provide assistance with Operation Airdrop. The group asked to come has a helicopter. Operation Airdrop works with Heliodrop volunteers from all over the country to move supplies to people in need. The FEMA response has been terrible, and local sheriffs have thrown FEMA out of some towns and areas. It is the veterans who have set up this grassroots response. My source found them to be well organized and professional at meeting the needs of the people devastated by Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. Local churches are collecting donations of jet fuel, food, lunches, resources, lodging, generators, medicine, clothes, and diapers, and anything else people want to donate. The donated items get consolidated at local distribution centers run by veteran volunteers. Most of the requests for help come on Facebook that the volunteers monitor regularly. If you need help, post on Facebook where you are and what you need. My source was volunteering at a distribution center located at Harley-Davidson of Asheville in Swannanoa, North Carolina. In this picture, you can see supplies on the left, gas cans in the middle, and veterans on the right, some with missing arms and prosthetic legs. These veterans are amazing. Since the roads washed out, helicopters are the best way to deliver supplies to those in need. One problem on the ground is that yellow jacket nests have been unearthed by the flooding, Swarms of yellow jackets are creating problems and EpiPens are needed. One problem in the air is that Heliodrop are commercial helicopter volunteers. Commercial helicopters can only go up to 4,000 feet, so they can do local stuff. The area around Boone, North Carolina has elevations up to 5,500 feet. Only military can fly that high, so we are not sure if these people are being helped by the National Guard or anyone in the military. Thanks for watching.
On September 23, 2024, the Senate held a significant hearing focusing on chronic disease and nutrition. Public health experts, doctors, scientists, and journalists gathered in Washington to shine a light on a pressing issue: how giant corporations wield enormous control over our food and healthcare systems, fueling an epidemic of chronic disease. Despite its importance, this eye-opening discussion didn't make headlines. Media coverage was minimal, and where it existed, it skewed the panel's message, overlooking the articulate concerns about our profit-driven healthcare and food systems. Instead, the narrative was twisted into partisan bickering, missing the vital need to address a common threat to public well-being. Experts at the hearing offered eye-opening insights into how modern diets are harming us and proposed practical solutions to combat the wave of metabolic disorders.
We are so busy in our healthcare system, billing and coding and paying each other, and every stakeholder has their gigantic lobby in Washington, D.C., and everybody's making a lot of money, except for one stakeholder, the American citizen. They are financing this giant, expensive healthcare system through their paycheck deduction for health insurance and the Medicare excise tax. As we go down this path of billing and coding and medicating, and can we be real for a second? We have poisoned our food supply, engineered highly addictive chemicals that we put into our food. We spray it with pesticides that kill pests. What do you think they do to our gut lining and our microbiome? And then they come in sick. The GI tract is reacting. It's not an acute inflammatory storm. It's a low-grade chronic inflammation. And it makes people feel sick. And that inflammation permeates and drives so many of our chronic diseases that we didn't see half a century ago. Who's working on it? Who's looking into this? Who's talking about it? Our healthcare system is playing whack-a-mole on the back end, and we are not talking about the root causes.
Alarming statistics have surfaced about the health of young Americans. More than half of the youth population suffers from chronic conditions. Nearly half of adolescents have mental health disorders. And obesity affects 1 in 6 young people between the ages 10 to 17. Even more distressing is the rise in colon cancers amongst children and teens. And a staggering 77% of young Americans are deemed ineligible for military service due to health and fitness issues.
Ultra-processed foods aren't just driving weight gain and subsequent metabolic dysfunction. Ultra-processed foods are exposing us to dangers that are invisible to the naked eye. Forever chemicals, pesticide residues, and endocrine disruptors. You won't find microplastics on the ingredients list of any item in your cupboard, but they're there too, harming everything from our fertility to our cardiovascular health and increasing risk of heart attack, stroke, and death. New research published in the New England Journal of Medicine has shown our bodies are capable and resilient, but today the toxic burden is simply too high. These compounds are laced into the very food-like products that line our grocery store shelves, and yet they remain under-discussed in public health conversations. In fact, legitimately concerned families are gaslit again and again, reminded that, quote, everything is a chemical. It's insulting to American families like mine who have seen real sickness.
At the heart of this health crisis lies an overlooked truth. Giant corporations have significant control over our food and healthcare systems. These corporations, according to critics, manipulate government agencies to back policies that harm both human health and the environment. The hearing emphasized the extensive use of pesticides, such as glyphosate, prevalent in the U.S. Farmers often use glyphosate to boost crop yields. Still, it's banned in Europe over cancer risks and environmental concerns. This brings up serious questions over commonly sprayed crops like corn, soy, and wheat, which are also major allergens.
Our food is being tainted by dangerous chemicals, and it's making us sick. Our current agriculture system origin story involves large chemical companies, not farmers, chemists. 85% of the food that you are consuming started from a patented seed sold by a chemical corporation that was responsible for creating Agent Orange in the Vietnam War. Why are chemical companies feeding America? In 1974, the U.S. started spraying our crops with an herbicide called glyphosate, and in the early 1990s, we began to see the release of genetically modified foods into our food supply. It all seems to begin with a chemical company by the name IG Farben, the later parent company of Bayer. Farben provided the chemicals used in Nazi nerve agents and gas chambers. When the wars ended, these companies needed a market for their chemicals. If that is not alarming enough, glyphosate is produced by and distributed from China. Americans deserve a straight answer. Why does an agrochemical company own where our food comes from?
It's not just a food issue. These pesticides pose health dangers that extend beyond our plates. With billions of pounds used in agriculture annually, pesticides are linked to chronic illnesses and irreversible health impacts on kids, presenting a cancer risk that some equate to smoking. Ironically, many pesticides are also so toxic they're banned on golf courses, though their use on agricultural land persists. Supporting these pesticide-laden crops, government subsidies help sustain mass food production despite its known risks to public and environmental health. The hearing also pointed out the alarming differences between American and European versions of popular food brands. Products like cereals, sodas, and snacks often contain different ingredients depending on their location. Europe bans many food dyes, preservatives, and GMOs that are common in the U.S., allowing American companies to profit from ultra-processed foods at the expense of public health.
It is a travesty that the majority of Americans don't even know they are constantly exposed to thousands of untested ingredients that are actually banned or regulated in other countries. To put it bluntly, for the last 50 years, we have been running the largest uncontrolled science experiment ever done on humanity without their consent. Why should America, the greatest country on earth, be the last developed nation to protect its people?
Another hot topic was the pharmaceutical industry's focus on profits over patient care. Experts expressed concerns about biotech companies avoiding one-time cures because they could jeopardize the ongoing revenue from treating chronic conditions. Congress has been criticized for providing protection to the pharmaceutical industry during the opioid crisis. Companies made billions from opioid prescriptions before pivoting to sell medications for resulting addictions. With vaccines being a significant source of revenue, these companies are motivated to expand vaccine schedules and introduce new vaccines to increase their market share.
In 1985, newborn millennials had to follow a schedule of just a handful of vaccines. Today, a child following the recommended vaccine schedule will receive up to 70 shots by the time they turn 18, including 27 before he or she turns 2, and as many as 6 shots in a single visit. Are all these shots producing healthier kids? According to the data, no. Are we allowed to even ask? Also, no. Some parents who've asked too many questions about the recommended vaccine schedule can find themselves reported to Child Protection Services, or they will get kicked out of their pediatrician's office for not being compliant. This is America, the land of the free. Parents are being held hostage. They did not sign up to co-parent with the government. We want a divorce.
Recent investigations have put a spotlight on the troubling connections between the FDA, drug companies, and media outlets. The FDA used to be fully taxpayer funded, but now relies primarily on payments from the very companies it's supposed to regulate, raising questions about its objectivity. Reports suggest agency policies might be skewed in favor of industry interests rather than prioritizing public health.
What we are dealing with here is so much more than a physical health crisis. This is a spiritual crisis. We are choosing death over life. We are choosing darkness over light for people and the planet, which are inextricably linked. We are choosing to erroneously believe that we are separate from nature and that we can continue to poison nature and then outsmart it. Our path out will be a renewed respect for the miracle of life and a renewed respect for nature. We can restore health to Americans rapidly with smart policy and courageous leadership. We need a return to courage. We need a return to common sense and intuition. We need a return to awe for the sheer miraculousness of our lives. We need all hands on deck. Thank you.
The hearing highlighted how important nutrition and lifestyle are in preventing disease. To make real change, we need better access to healthy food and fewer processed options. Supporting education and community programs is key to encouraging healthier choices. The goal is for policymakers to take these talks seriously and help improve public health in the long term.
The brilliant result of using natural remedies can often leave lasting impressions, especially when it comes to personal care and recovery. UNN Field Messenger Soraya shares her experience with a simple yet powerful product called DMSO.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Soraya Correa. I am a field messenger for UNN, reporting from Lithia, Florida. I want to talk to you about a product that I use. It's called DMSO. I got attacked last year walking my dog, and I got bitten on the side of my face and my leg. I was using the DMSO, this product, for my wrinkles. After my attack, I realized that my marks were gone in something like 3 to 4 months. It lasts you very long because you only need a little drops of the product I apply in my face and now my leg too. I'm going to put all the aloe crystals. DMSO. It's half and half. Half of the product, DMSO, and half of whatever you're mixing it with. In this case, aloe vera. Going to mix the product. For when you're going to use it, it's very simple. You can use drops or you can use it with your hands. A very small quantity will do. Just make sure that you have clean hands, clean face, and you just apply. Very simple. It could itch a bit if you put too much, but you don't need to put a lot for it to work. And this is all I do. And that's how I got rid of my mark here where I have the incident with the dog that bite me on this side. And then thanks for watching.
Australia's retirement villages, often marketed as havens of independence, low maintenance, and security, may not be as carefree as they seem. A deeper look into resident contracts reveals a pattern of strict control and hidden costs. There are more than 250,000 people living in more than 2,500 villages nationwide. Industry experts claim these homes are typically 43% cheaper than the average house price in the same area, and residents are reportedly 41% happier, or at least that's what they say.
And why retirement communities? Basically, look, this is the reason I came up, this is for my own grandparents. I'm a financial planner. My grandparents were in a retirement village for ages. Why? Maintenance. My grandfather, I didn't want him climbing up on ladders, doing maintenance in, their old home that they bought in the 60s. Social. This was really big during COVID too, that people who were living, like for me, I live in a normal suburban home. I don't know my next door neighbour's name. I just see a garage door go up and down. That's it. People got really isolated during COVID. Whereas people who were living in retirement communities like this one fared a hell of a lot better. Why? Because it was like when I was in the army, you're like living with all your friends. And with a retirement community, it's not just random people like in an apartment in the city. It's people who can, they're usually of a similar age, similar type of background. And that's where the interests come in.
A recent investigation has revealed troubling aspects of this industry, which has largely avoided scrutiny from regulatory authorities and aged care commissions. Residents face numerous restrictions: no pets without permission, no smoking in their homes, no visitors for more than a month, and no garden decorations without consent. Additionally, mandatory medical exams and complex financial implications are common. Critics describe the industry as exploitative, with little regulation to protect residents. Complaints often highlight steep fees when leaving a village, which can include hefty exit charges and refurbishment bills.
One of the charges is an exit fee paid by residents when they sell. Lynette's mother Ruth is expected to pay an exit fee of $245,000. But there's more. Most contracts also include a refurbishment fee to prepare the property for sale. In Ruth's case, the fee was huge.
$167,000.
That's the cost.
That's what they're going to take out of Mum's money, yes.
Lynette and her mother were given an exhaustive list of items that needed to be done. What state was the house in?
One careful lady living there for 9 years. I might have replaced a few things like the door handles in her kitchen. They've gutted the place.
This was despite a condition report completed by Living Choice, which found most of the home was in a reasonable or fair state. New plaster, tiles and carpet. The bathrooms and kitchen were completely overhauled, even door hinges replaced. And more than $1,000 for a final clean, double the price of quotes we received for cleaning. We got vastly cheaper prices for other items.
For many residents, their investment in these communities ends up with severe financial loss, leaving them unable to secure future aged care accommodations. Contracts, some stretching up to 149 pages, dictate everything from fees charged upon leaving a village to costs covering worker insurance and renovations. Many say these contracts are confusing and misleading, leaving residents with financial problems.
It is not a money-making exercise. In almost all cases, you do not get a title to the property. There are significant exit fees on the way out, so it is purely a lifestyle decision, not a monetary decision. If you own your own house and the value of that house goes up $100,000, you get the whole $100,000 increase. If your retirement village goes up, well, it won't go up that much, but if the unit you're in goes up, say, $40,000, you won't get the $40,000 increase because there are exit fees on the way out. Generally, most villages charge between 3 and 3.5% per year for every year you stay there in an exit fee, plus most have a long-term maintenance fund fee of around 3%. This caps out generally around 30% if you're there for more than 7 or 8 years, and that's 30% of the ingoing contribution. So if you've paid $500,000 to go into your village unit, on the way out, the village might take 30% or $150,000 of that $500,000, meaning you only get $350,000 back on the way out.
An analysis of numerous contracts has shown most retirees leave with less money than they originally invested. Also, many contracts state that if a resident dies or moves out, maintenance fees continue to be charged until the unit is sold. Some states have implemented limits on how long these fees can be charged due to past instances of prolonged billing, sometimes lasting up to 4 years. Retirement villages often feature operators who manage property sales and set selling prices. This arrangement can be convenient for sellers, as real estate agents sometimes avoid selling retirement village homes due to the process's complexity. However, it can lead to conflicts, with operators controlling the market by setting prices, sale timing, and buyer eligibility, especially if residents need to sell urgently. There have been reported instances where village operators pressured residents to leave to collect exit fees and delayed unit sales to continue collecting maintenance charges, sometimes even after the resident passed away.
Exit fees aren't the only way lifestyle gouges residents. It charges dead people rent.
Dead people are paying for the facilities and the use of electricity and water. They're not there, they're dead.
When Diane passed, I asked here if they could list the property for sale, and they declined. They said to me that it's not in their best interest to sell the property.
Why?
Because they blatantly told me that they had other new homes available.
How long did it take to sell?
Over 12 months. The rent was being still paid and no one was living in there.
When residents leave, they are typically refunded their initial payment, minus a deferred management fee and other charges, including property renovation costs. Additionally, the ingoing loan model has been criticized for exceeding the actual living costs, trapping older people in difficult conditions. Many villages suffer from poor management and maintenance, and residents often face bullying and harassment. Despite these issues, residents feel unable to leave due to the substantial exit fees and the high cost of moving elsewhere. Several states have introduced measures to help relieve financial burdens on residents. As the industry continues to evolve, it's important to balance financial innovation with fair treatment and transparent terms. This will help make sure retirement villages serve as genuine havens for older Australians, not financial traps. Ensuring clear communication and protecting residents' rights should be a priority in improving retirement village policies.
As a seasonal treat, the prickly pear cactus fruit thrives in the deserts of Arizona. UNN Field Messenger Rick shows us how to harvest these health-boosting fruits and make refreshing juice.
Hi, this is Rick from Phoenix, Arizona, reporting for United Network News. As you can see my son in the background, we're harvesting what you call cactus tuna. And it's the red fruit that bloom or that grows and ripens this time of year.
Exactly, these are rhinopolis. You can cut rhinopolis cactus, so these are edible palms. It's the same ones you find at the grocery store.
So when you see birds eating them, that really shows you when they're the ripest. But the desert tortoise, they'll eat these right off of the cactus. They can, the little fine cactus needles that are on them don't, they don't bother them. The wild donkeys that are here in the desert, they will eat them, and you can see kind of how the birds will just pluck a hole right in them. And you can see we got almost like a quarter of a bucket here. So once we harvest all this, we're going to take it home and make syrup. You can make jelly. You can infuse it in your tea. There's many uses for it, but it's really a delicacy that is only available this time of year. So you can see the real small fine thorns or fiberglass like small thorns. And what we're doing now is burning them off. So you just put them in the fire, and once the color changes to a real dark burgundy color, you can pretty much bet that all the thorns are burned off. So the next step is to peel them, take that skin off. Making prickly pear juice is a labor of love. It does take some time to peel and process all of the prickly pears, or cactus tuna, the, I guess, scientific name for it. But once you have actually done all the processing and put it through the steps needed to create the juice, there's many, many different applications. As you can see here, it's being strained to remove all the seeds that are inside. And then once it's strained, we put it through a cheesecloth. Here's a look at the final product, about a half a quart of juice. Now this is just one blender full. We went on along to make about 4 quarts of juice. Hope you enjoyed this report.
In healthcare, there are two major approaches to treating sickness: holistic care and allopathic care. Holistic care treats the whole person, and allopathic care is more focused on treating the disease or injury specifically, which may involve surgeries and pharmaceuticals. Both differ fundamentally in philosophy, treatment methods, and patient focus. However, we are starting to see more holistic methods being integrated into the care plan for patients, even with larger medical groups. This provides people with more options on how to overcome major obstacles, such as chronic pain. All right, so Sean is joining us today. And Sean, I'm really excited to talk to you about chronic pain, not because it's a super fun topic, or certainly if you're going through it, but because I feel like you have a different approach to this, because you're part of a large medical group, but you treat patients more in a holistic way, where you're trying to address the whole problem. And the people that are watching this now are very much interested in getting at the root of whatever is causing that chronic pain, and not just putting Band-Aids all over it. So I get really excited when I hear about people like you that are in more of a traditional setting that are trying to change things up a little bit. So talk to us a little bit about chronic pain and where that comes from.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Sunny, to be here with you and to instruct maybe some of your viewers about chronic pain. So chronic pain is what we call biopsychosocial in nature. Mm-hmm. So there's biological components to our pain, there's psychological components to our pain, and there's also social components to our pain. And it's unpleasant. It's a sensory experience, pain is, but it's also an emotional experience, right? And pain has to do with tissue damage, but it also has to do, and this is the scientific definition of pain, actually, by the way, actually has to do with the potential for tissue damage as well. And so what I do is I help people to kind of reconcile that amidst maybe a medical system that naturally by default wants to just kind of promote or push some of these biomedical or biomechanical approaches.
When you have people come to you with chronic pain, kind of walk me through what that looks like and you determining the best way to approach this with them. Again, going back to this holistic approach.
When I meet with a patient, I will talk about their history of their pain, how it started, if we can understand why it started. Oftentimes people's chronic pain starts with what we call an acute pain situation, right? So like, for example, an injury that brought on tissue damage, but then maybe what happens is that pain persists beyond what we would expect the time for tissue healing. So usually in medicine, they say for most injuries, tissue healing needs at least, let's say 3 to 6 months, right? But then pain often persists beyond that. And so I help people kind of understand some of the factors in their lives that may or may not be contributing to their pain continuing. And I do a lot of educating people about this notion that pain is biopsychosocial. So helping people understand that there are these biological components such as your injury history, your immune system, let's say your gut and how you digest food or medications. That's a part of it, but that's not the whole part of it. And getting back to kind of what your question is about, these holistic measures, right? So I also help people to understand, like, well, what are the psychological components to pain, right? So, for example, how do my thoughts, my feelings influence my pain? Like, how do my memories influence my pain or my expectations? And then there's also the social component, which I'd say I'm a big fan of, because I think the social component to pain is the least understood, and that actually makes me the most excited to kind of figure it out. But social components kind of involve often like how we are relating with those around us, with people from work, people from our community, from church, maybe our family, friends, our social support systems, or lack of support systems, how isolated we feel. All of that also has to do with your pain.
How is this perceived with the patients that you treat? What is their response to this?
I will say, Sunny, one of the things that is harder to do, which is really thinking about what's at the root of pain, is convincing them about the biopsychosocial model, right? So convincing people that their chronic pain has these components and that they deserve equal, if not greater, attention, that is where we struggle, right? Okay. And I think a lot of it has to do with how culture influences our perception of our symptoms, right? And now if we were all brought up as children, being taught that pain is something that is multifaceted,
right?
Then I think there would be more openness to saying, okay, my pain has to do with these factors as well, and I need to give these equal attention. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case, right? So something hurts, and what do? Is we give our children Tylenol, right? One of my little ones was walking out the door to school today and had a stomach ache, and it's funny because for me as a health psychologist, right, I immediately I go to, okay, well, what could have happened biologically that caused the stomach ache? Yeah. What could have happened? Okay, is he not wanting to go to school today, right? Is that producing some of these symptoms, right? And not that it's feigned, right? The symptoms are real, and I think that's an important piece with pain too, right? The symptoms are real, but our psychological functioning and our stress system is what influences the presentation and manifestation of these symptoms, right? And so I'm thinking, and of course, all he needs is a hug, but in my brain, I'm like, okay, is it this? Is it that? Is it that? Is that? And then of course the hug comes a second or two later. Right. but that's the process that I go through every day with my patients, right? And with pain, is I try to help to kind of understand the interplay between all of these things.
Sean recently started a YouTube channel where he explores topics such as chronic pain, sleep, meditation, and all things mind and body. Simply search for Mind Body Doc.
At UNN, you are the news. Get involved by joining our weekly Field Messenger meetings. Visit unitednetwork.earth to learn more. Remember, if it's going to be, it's up to me.